Hey, my name is Abe Bowling. I'm the host of Insurance Tips for Contractors. I've been a contractor tradesman specialist for about 16 years. I've been specializing in insurance for contractors and tradesmen. I create these videos to help contractors kind of navigate the land of insurance. If you ever want any help from me, I'm happy to do it. Our phone number here is 866-998-7283. That's our toll-free number. I am licensed in all lower 48 states, and I'm happy to help you out with whatever you need. Today, we're talking about insurance requirements for construction projects. A lot of times contractors go online looking for, information on legal or contractual insurance requirements for specific projects, especially, when you're bidding for work from, a new vendor. Maybe it's a huge company that is nationwide and they've got this, complicated insurance requirements section in their contracts, which we're going to take a look at here in just a minute. Sometimes it's, you've got a property management company or, another local general contractor that you're working with. Sometimes it's tract housing that is what you need to gain in compliance with, which is a whole different type of policy. But we want to look at kind of just a couple of standard scenarios, one a little bit more complicated than the other on insurance requirements. So the very, very first thing that I recommend in this kind of scenario is you really want a contractor tradesman insurance specialist who can understand the contract requirements and knows how to read these contracts, knows how to read the requirements, knows what the policies have in them, and then knows what the capability of the policy that you're currently on is. Because a lot of times you'll get a job or a bid or an opportunity to work with a new vendor. And depending on how complicated those requirements are, sometimes they're really simple. They just need a blanket additional insured, just a certificate of insurance. And just about any insurance company out there should be able to do that. That is the most basic. Your agent should have that form on your policy ready to go in a moment's notice. They should be able to create those certificates of insurance for you the very same day that you request them. Shouldn't be a big deal at all. If it is, you're with the wrong agency for sure. Occasionally, though, and some contractors, this is kind of their business model. So some people, it's not occasionally. Some people, this is every single day. Occasionally, for a lot of folks, and standard for some folks, there's very complicated insurance requirements sections of contracts, and so what we want to do is kind of dive into some of those and go over, what some of these things mean. If you don't pick out a contractor tradesman specialist, somebody that this is their niche, this is what they do, you're going to run into a few different problems. Number one, they may not have the capacity to meet the requirement. They just may not have the insurance companies that they work with either at all or on a regular basis that have the capacity to meet these requirements for your company, which is obviously a big problem. If you getting paid or getting this job depends on your insurance agent getting this right. So that's the first issue is either you have an agent that if they're not specializing in it, either they don't understand what is being asked of them and what's being asked of you and your insurance policy, or they just don't have the markets to shop and meet these requirements. The second problem is if you have them on your policy, if they don't know how to properly relay this information on the certificate of insurance in the way that the certificate holder, general contractor, tract home builder, commercial property management service, vendor credentialing service, whoever is asking you for this proof of insurance, if they don't know how to relay the information in the way that this entity is asking for the information to be relayed to them, it's going to really, really mess things up for your company. Worst case scenario, it's going to cost you thousands of dollars, and you're not going to get paid. Worst case scenario for work that you have already done, and maybe you didn't know about these insurance requirements until after the job, or maybe they sent them to you and you overlooked it in an email, whatever the case is. That's worst case scenario. Best case scenario is if you don't have an agent who can get this right, the first time, maybe the second time, if there's some back and forth, it's going to severely mess up your accounts receivable. It's going to screw up the cash flow for your business. And obviously, that's not something that you want. So it is really important, again, to have an agent who knows this stuff inside and out and can meet these requirements and relay the information in a way that they're going to accept. So that way they can release their check to you. So let's dive in. Here's a contractor, standard subcontractor agreement. You can see this document is one that a client sent us. It's 106 pages long. And the section 19 is what covers the insurance requirements. And so we'll dive into that. But, number one, knowing where the insurance requirements section is in the contract is going to be big for you if you're kind of wanting to review this on your own, or for your agent, which is important again that they're experienced. So it says here, subcontractor shall, at its own expense, purchase and maintain in effect at all times during the performance of this agreement, and for such time otherwise specified, not less than the coverage limits required herein. So they want insurance coverage for your workers' compensation and employer's liability. They want $1 million, which is not uncommon. That's totally fine. But they want a workers' compensation policy. Some contractors are in monopolistic states, and again, we operate in all lower 48 states. So any state that you are having an issue with or needing, a consultation for, we can do for you. But this is not in a monopolistic state, i.e., where the state handles the workers' compensation exclusively. There's a handful of those states. This is in a state that you private buy your workers' compensation coverage. So our job is to make sure that you have this limit, you have this policy, but you also have this limit on your workers' comp. They want general liability. And it goes into, can't be issued under a claims made policy. There's claims made and there's occurrence. Claims made will save you money, but it will really limit opportunities that you have like this. And it's a coverage limitation too. I don't recommend folks going on a claims made policy, except in very, very, very few circumstances does it even make sense to talk about it. One is, it can't be on a claims made or a modified occurrence policy form. So here it's talking about things like sunsets. So there's policies that have 2-year sunsets, and coverage is no longer valid after 2 years of the date that you complete the work, or 2 years after the date of the policy. We don't want anything like that. These guys don't either. And then a lot of this is just real standard verbiage. This one doesn't want any, exclusions for, let's see. Coverage shall include, without any limitation, liability arising from premises operations, independent contractors, products completed operations, damage to work performed on your behalf by subcontractors or vendors, residential construction, EIFS, which is an exterior insulation finishing system, may or may not be applicable. Contractual liability. That's a pretty important one. Personal and advertising injury, explosion, collapse, underground property damage, and terrorism. A lot of policies have exclusions for these things. So your agent would need to know that your policy covers it, and then they may be asked to provide evidence that it's covered in this policy. The limits they want here, $1 million each occurrence, $2 million general aggregate. Pretty much industry standard, nothing special there. Automobile liability, and then it goes on and talks some more about, different, it wants a waiver of subrogation. Let's see here, what else? Completed operations. There's some different endorsements that they want. And again, your policy is going to have to be able to accommodate that. You're going to have those things added to your policy. They want automobile liability. And then it kind of goes into $1 million combined single limit. Pretty industry standard. They want an umbrella policy for $2 million. So they want subcontractor property equipment insurance. And it's just saying that you're going to, have full coverage for damage to your own equipment. And then that way, waiver of subrogation again against the owners. That way, if anything happens to your equipment on their job site, it's not going to be something that that you go after this, general contractor or property manager, whoever for. The umbrella, some contractors have a lot of jobs that require umbrella policies. Some don't. If you don't, this would be something that you would want to think about before you accept this job. And again, your agent should be able to look at this document, run quotes for you, and say, here's how much it's going to cost for you to get in compliance with this job. That process really shouldn't take longer than a day or two for them to get all of this information to you. Sometimes, depending on which company you're with, they can do it the same day, but not always in all trades of construction. So it goes down here. So again, we want to take into consideration, do we have this policy? And if we don't, how much does it cost? Does it make sense for this project? Am I going to get more work from this company, etc.? Another thing that's required under this contract for it says may not apply to all subcontractor scopes. So we'd want some clarification on that if we didn't already know. For this particular client, we do know that they're going to be required. Their trade is going to be required for this coverage. It's just pollution liability. They want a minimum of 2 million per occurrence and 2 million in the aggregate. And a lot of times we could do a million on the underlying and then, the additional million on the umbrella. If the pollution policy is also covered under this umbrella, that would give us a little bit of a leeway there. It says if any subcontractors work involves the use of unmanned aerial vehicles, drones, helicopters, etc., subcontractor shall maintain an aircraft liability, unmanned aerial systems liability policy. There's a builder's risk that might be required depending on your scope in this. And then it goes into general provisions for the insurance. So this is probably a little bit more complicated than maybe your average policy, your average, contract. But this is not insane, right? This isn't like some crazy. I've seen way crazier than this. But this is something that's totally doable. But again, you just have to be on the right policy. And then if you're not on the right policy, you're going to need an agent that knows how to get you on the right policy. This is a second example, so this is totally different from the one we just looked at. But sometimes requirements for insurance come through looking like this. And so they're going to say, we want to have, this $1 million right here. I'm surprised that this aggregate limit's not at 2 million, but it's at 1 million. That's fine. They want the insurer to have an AM best rating of A- or higher. That's a financial strength rating. It's like a credit rating of an insurance company. That's pretty standard. Nobody wants an insurance company that's not going to be able to pay claims in the event of a claim from your policy. They want an automobile liability policy. Looks like they either want split limits of 500, 500, 500, or they want a combined single limit of $1 million. So again, this is pretty industry standard as we saw in our last contract. And then this one right here, again, as we saw in our last contract, they want workers' compensation coverage of $1 million. And then they're going to want all of this language right here from about here, because it says attach a copy of the general liability additional insured endorsements reflecting the following: PB Bell asset management, blah blah blah, and then that'll end right here. And then there's a little note down here for the insurance agents. And then this is how they want their certificate holder box to read. They don't necessarily obviously want this part right here where it says you can upload your documents to the Real Page. Real Page is a compliance house that scans insurance documents, checks them for compliance. I call them box checkers because that's really what they are. They're just checking boxes to make sure. And if it's not exactly the way that they want it to read, they're not there to interpret coverage. They're there to call balls and strikes, right? They're there to say, yep, this certificate of insurance and the policy meets the requirements or meets the box checks that this vendor has asked us to screen for, or no, it doesn't. So they're very, very picky. If it does not fit exactly with what they're looking for, you either won't have compliance or you're going to get your checks delayed and things like that. And none of which are good scenarios. So, with this one right here, it says that it wants the policy to reflect the following. A lot of times we can put what's called a blanket endorsement on here. And what that means is that it's just per written contract. So, that we can keep on file. And again, so even this one right here, not complicated. We it looks kind of complicated, but it's really not. And so we can pull that blanket endorsement from your file. We can create this certificate of insurance that they're requesting in-house, same day, and then we can send it over to you and to RealPage or whoever the entity is that's requesting this coverage. So if you are having issues with your certificates of insurance, and maybe you're with an agent that is not a contractor tradesman specialist, we'd be happy to take a look, happy to, check out, see what we can do. We will be able to solve your problem one way or another for sure. I was at lunch one day and I saw a contractor I had insured years before, and he goes, "I've been looking all over for your phone number." And I said, "Well, what can I do for you?" And he said, "I've got $70,000 hung up in accounts receivable because of my insurance certificate, and I need you." And so we quoted his insurance again. We got him a policy issued. We sent it over, that same day, the certificate of insurance with the endorsements and requirements that they were looking for. And he had that $70,000 released within 48 hours of that lunch conversation inside that little restaurant. So it's definitely something, even if you're stuck, you can get through it. It's not a big deal. You just have to have an agent, myself, or one of the other, tradesman contractor specialists out there, be, checking it out, knowing what their markets do, knowing what options look like, and knowing how to move through this fast for you. So again, 866-998-7283 is our toll-free number. That'll reach me and my team. So if you have anything for us to check out and see how we can help, we'd love to do it. Thanks so much for tuning in.